Hey up guys, I'm Mason, the blind wrestling fan, bringing you a roundup of this week in WWE. This is the WITD Weekly podcast, and if you enjoy this episode, you know what to do. I'm now available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and other audio platforms, links in the description. To kick things off, next week we've got a pair of intriguing title matches. The Hurt Business will attempt to capture the Raw Tag Team titles from the New Day, and Randy Orton will defend the WWE Championship against Drew McIntyre. So let's look at the Hurt Business versus the New Day first. Personally, I'd probably give the win to the Hurt Business here. They've been a strong staple of Raw over the last couple of months. They've been on a roll, putting in some good performances, they've been boot strong, and I think the Hurt Business versus the Street Profits is just a more interesting match. The New Day don't need any more spotlight, they've got the legacy, they're always going to be over, they are legends at this point. They are guaranteed Hall of Famers, and they just don't need any more spotlight, whereas in the Hurt Business, walking in, battering the Street Profits and walking out with a solid win for the Raw brand seems like a really good call to me. It does depend, I think, on who ends up being the tag team that takes on the New Day. If it's Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin, then I could maybe see the New Day walking out with the win, but if Bobby Lashley's in that match, wow, I definitely think the Hurt Business win then, because Bobby Lashley has been booked really strong over the last couple of months. He's pretty much destroyed anyone that he's got in the ring with. But I just think that it's the right way to go. Obviously, I'm not in charge of Raw. I don't know how to run a wrestling business, so I could be talking out of my arse. But to be honest, I just think that it's a more interesting match anyway. In terms of Randy versus Drew, that one's a little bit more complicated and a little bit more unpredictable because it really depends on what they want to do. I think that Drew versus Roman is the more interesting match. Randy versus Roman is good, but they've both got such strong characters, they're on such a roll, and they are booked so strong at the minute that it just seems like it would come out with some sort of wonky finish, whereas I think Drew versus Roman, they could easily have Roman go over there and not necessarily make Drew look too bad, especially if Jey Uso gets involved and maybe have a bit of shenanigans there. But I could see Drew picking up the win just so he can face Roman and then dropping it to Randy again, but then that just sort of makes Drew look a bit like a chump, really. If he beats Randy for the title, goes and loses to Roman, and then drops the title back to Randy, that seems, I don't know, that just doesn't make him look very good. Whereas if Randy goes in and he loses to Roman, or there's some sort of wonky finish with The Fiend and Jey Uso, and there's a couple of different things that could happen. So I think personally that Randy will come away with the win out of this title match, and he'll go on and face Roman. But it's definitely a really weird matchup because neither of them really needs to take a loss right now, especially Roman. I really can't see Roman walking away with the loss in that match. Either it's going to be a wonky finish and there'll be no clear winner, or Roman will beat whoever he goes up against, because they are not handing Roman a loss right now with how strong he's being booked right now. So yeah, I reckon the Hurt Business walk away as the tag team champions, and Randy Orton successfully defends. It doesn't look good for Drew at that point, but I definitely think that's how we'll go. Ricochet, what will you do? It seems that Retribution is out to get Ricochet, and by get, I mean they're either going to destroy him or recruit him. Last week, he had a match against Tucker, handily defeating him before Retribution came out and beat them both up. This week, he was in a match against Mustafa Ali. I love Ali in this role. I think that he brings such an intensity and really puts forward that his character is so motivated, and I just don't think that you can beat him in terms of trash talk right now, because it feels like he really believes what he's saying. He's screaming at Ricochet throughout the match that one man can't change the world, it takes many, that nothing is going to change until Ricochet is willing to change. Then we get Ricochet presented with a choice towards the end of the match. He's up on the top rope and he's got to decide, am I going to go for Retribution or Ali? If I go for Ali, then Retribution are probably going to get involved, they're going to break up the pin, and I'll probably end up losing off the back of that. So he decides to go for Retribution instead, launching himself at them with Reckoning just about getting herself out of the way, because God forbid we get intergender action, even if it's accidental. This doesn't end up paying off for Ricochet though. He misses a Phoenix Splash, gets locked in the Koji Clutch and taps out. I would love to see Ricochet join Retribution. I think that that's a really decent way to keep Retribution fresh and make them look dangerous. If they can sway people, convince them, bring them over to their side, then that makes them seem way more dangerous than if it's just this core group of people. And adding more talent to it just gives them a fresh reason to start booking them better. If Ricochet suddenly joins, he could be the linchpin of the group, the thing that gets them motivated, and it actually gives them it gives more reason to start giving them wins if they have more numbers, more people, and it actually bolsters Mustafa Ali at that point, because he can start believing, okay, people are listening to me. I just don't think that you can beat Ali in this role, and I really wish that there was better things in store for Retribution. One of the spots in this match, right, it was a top rope backstabber delivered by Mustafa Ali. Not that you would know it if you watched the match and you were blind like me, because Tom Phillips, the amazing commentator that he is, called it a backbreaker. It's two separate moves, Tom. You can't just interchangeably use the names. A backbreaker is not the same as a backstabber. Do your job, Tom. It's so frustrating. It's such a simple little thing, but in terms of visualising the match, I really would like it if you actually use the correct terms. But yeah, I'd love to see Ricochet join Retribution, but I just don't know whether they actually will go there. It would definitely freshen up Ricochet's character, and it'd make Retribution look a lot more dangerous. Okay, I hate to admit it, but they're starting to turn me round on the Raw Men's Survivor Series storyline. The final member of the team was decided after Riddle defeated Elias and Jeff Hardy to qualify, and what followed was some truly Riddle brand comedy, and even though I shouldn't have found it funny, I will admit it was a bit of a guilty pleasure, and it did make me chuckle a few times. Everyone is bickering, they're just sniping backwards and forwards, everyone's getting mad at each other. AJ keeps trying to assert his dominance as team captain, nobody wants him to be team captain, everyone's getting really mad, and finally Riddle interjects and says what they need are some sick code names. His words, not mine, I'd never say that, I even felt a bit stupid saying it then. So he calls AJ Skipper, dubs Braun Mongoose, calls Keith Lee Bro Lee, which is probably the least inventive of the bunch, and calls Sheamus Fireface. Sheamus is mad because he thinks it's a ginger joke, he's got red hair, is that a ginger joke? No, Riddle says, it's because when you get really mad, your face gets extremely red, like right now. And like I said, even though it shouldn't have, that did make me laugh. I heard Keith Lee having a little bit of a chuckle and it just tickled me and I couldn't help it. It was a guilty pleasure. Don't judge me. Anyway, they keep arguing and AJ says that what they really need is a tag team match. In fact, he's already cleared it with Adam Pearce, so they're going to have AJ as the special referee and Riddle, along with Keith Lee, is going to take on Braun Strowman and Sheamus, and that match is coming up. So, unfortunately, things don't go too well for Sheamus and Braun. They just can't get along. Their egos are too big, they keep tagging themselves in and they're just not getting along, and in the end Sheamus gets fed up, kicks Braun off the apron, and then gets rolled up and takes the loss. I actually think that AJ might be onto something here. Even though, when this first started happening, I was like, why are teammates fighting? This is a great idea. They're getting all of the bollocks out of the way now. They're fighting now. So when it comes to actual Survivor Series, all their issues are going to be sorted. They're going to have got it out the way, and they're going to be able to work as a team. So I actually think that even though they won't recognise his authority as team captain, he might actually be onto something, and he might be building a good team here. So yeah, I just thought that this was pretty entertaining. Even though it should be really stupid that they're all fighting, I feel like it actually makes sense. Riddle giving them all code names was entertaining. AJ's delivery as he tries to justify all of the things that he's saying. It was just really, really entertaining, and I can't fault it at all. I really think that they're getting it out of the way, and come Survivor Series, they're going to work as a really good team. Maybe on the Go Home show, have them have a match with either the Hurt Business or Retribution, and then they can come out with a dominant win, and that can show, yeah, we can work together as a team. I'm actually really looking forward to the Survivor Series match now to see how they do. I said it last week, but I'll say it again. At the minute, they're doing an absolutely fantastic job of making Lana look like an absolute underdog babyface. I think they're doing a great job of getting her over right now. The announce table spot has been repeated so much that it's actually becoming quite good. I hate to admit it, but I actually think it is. So this week, Shayna and Lana have a match, and you know, of course, Lana loses pretty quickly, tapping out, and Nia goes to put her through the announce table again, but Mandy and Dana say they need to work as a team, and they manage to stop Nia from doing so. Unfortunately for Lana, it's not all good news, because Mandy and Dana are still mad at her for costing them the tag team championships last week. How deluded are they? They never stood a chance of winning those championships. How delusional is that, thinking that they would have been able to beat Shayna and Nia? Anyway, Nia, later on in the night, has a match with Asuka, and she's doing a pretty good job, but Asuka keeps managing to get the counters. At one point, Nia gives her a big powerbomb, but Asuka manages to counter into the Asuka lock. Then Team Raw all gets involved, and Lana unfortunately ends up getting attacked by Asuka as well. And after the match, once it's all over, Nia ends up putting Lana through the table anyway. So I think that this is actually pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with Lana. Everyone's been saying that she's going to be the sole survivor, and I actually think that when she does end up being the last person on the team, and when she ends up pulling out the win for the Raw team, that could actually be a really cool moment. And even though everyone was complaining about it, everyone was saying that it was some underhanded punishment for Miro going to AEW, I just think that they've done a really good job of building sympathy for her and getting it to the point where most of us want to see her have a moment at Survivor Series. Whether or not she ends up winning the match for the Raw women's team, I don't know, because personally I do think that any team with Bianca Belair on stands a better chance than them lot, because they just don't seem to be getting along. And even though neither are the men's team, it doesn't seem to be, I don't know, it's not the same. I don't think that this is going to bring them together like what I said with the men, but I do think she'll be the last one on the team, and she's going to put on a really good performance, and I'm looking forward to it, and it could really do wonders for Lana's reputation here, so well done, I say. Moving on to NXT, once again, I didn't feel like it was the hottest week that the Black and Gold brand has ever had. Since Halloween Havoc, it sort of felt like they've just been treading water and wasting time a little bit, and I'm really looking forward to when they get closer to TakeOver so they can really get the ball rolling, start building towards that, and start being must-watch TV again. The one thing that I always enjoy week in, week out though, is Johnny Gargano. And this week he had one last chance to reverse his curse, and with the help of his new best friend, Mr. Wheel, he had an open challenge for the NXT North American Championship. However, the wheel was rigged and it ended up landing on Leon Ruff, because of course that is an easy win for Johnny Gargano, or so you would think. Johnny probably could have won the match if he'd actually been paying attention, but unfortunately he was way too distracted by the presence of Damian Priest. And towards the end of the match, he was busy gloating when he went to go for a super kick and Leon Ruff countered, got him in a sneaky crucifix pin and picked up the win. So now Leon Ruff is the North American champion. He's celebrating backstage and we get this great bit where Damian Priest goes up and tells him, "That win was great, I loved it, but Johnny's going to be here soon and he's going to be really annoyed, so take my black challenger and get the hell out of here." So Leon does, he scarpers, and then Johnny of course comes through the curtain and he's really mad and he's changed his mind now. He hates Wheels. Whose idea was that to boot that match? Whose stupid idea was it? Do your job, referees, do your job, Regal. And he's just really annoyed about it. Johnny can't make up his mind is what they should call him now. I actually thought that this worked really well. I saw a few people on Twitter complaining about the fact that Johnny is one of the top guys in NXT and they can't let him have a long title reign, and I just don't see it. WWE fans are so fickle sometimes. They complain when they don't build new stars, they complain when they try to build new stars, they complain when they don't tell long-term stories, they complain when they do, and they just can't win. I personally thought this was great. It just lends itself to this mad Johnny Gargano character who's just ping-ponging all over the place. He's just got no sense of direction as a character, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He's constantly seems like he's on the verge of a mental breakdown, and I just thought personally that this was really good. It gives Leon Ruff a nice push. He can have a few weeks or a month or so as the North American champion. I can't see him having a long reign, but it gets some unknown talent in front of the NXT audience. People who don't know him from Evolve can learn who he is. He gets some exposure. It carries on Johnny's Curse storyline, and I just think it was the right way to go, and it continues the feud between Gargano and Priest as well, so absolutely the right way to go, and I thought it was a really entertaining way to start off NXT. Things might not be looking good for Johnny, but things are definitely starting to pick up for Candice. This week she had a match with Toni Storm and she cheated to win using a leverage pin. Afterwards, Tony's about to beat her up for being such a cheating dick, and then Ghostface comes out and helps Candice beat Tony up. Shotzi runs out to even the score, but she ends up eating a wicked stepsister. And then Ghostface unmasks, and shock, surprise, it's Indy Hartwell, like we all thought it would be. The question still remains though in my mind, is Indy the only Ghostface, or in true Scream style, will there be more than one? I hope so. I really hope so, because I think that that's a way more interesting way to go. It would start this transition of NXT into a landscape of lots of factions. So we've got Legado del Fantasma, we've got the Kings of NXT, Undisputed Era, we would then have the Gargano faction, and I think that would be a really interesting way to go if everyone has somewhere to belong to. It works for New Japan in terms of having loads of factions, and I just think that it would be a really decent way to group everyone together and have motivations and interweaving storylines, but I feel like it's just going to end up just being Indy Hartwell. There was a short but pretty effective promo by Shotzi Blackheart where she talks about the fact that tank represents her family that she has in the military, and family means absolutely everything to her. She says it wasn't just a fun little tank, it was a piece of her, and now she's going to kick Candice's ass. Meanwhile, we had a backstage interview with Candice where she gloats over destroying the tank, and she fawns over Indy Hartwell, saying that she's pretty much her daughter now, so that is strange. Surely Indy Hartwell can't be that much younger than Candice. But again, that sort of plays into the fact that the Garganos are just absolutely delusional. I love the fact that it never goes well for the Garganos in terms of if one of them wins, the other one loses. One of them gets a championship, the other one doesn't win a championship. And I just like that it's never consistent. They're never on the up together. One of them's always on the down and one of them's always on the up. So I thought that this was a pretty cool thing. It was pretty predictable. We all thought Indy Hartwell was who Ghostface was, but like I said, just like the original Scream film, there needs to be more than one person that was Ghostface, and I'd like to see Johnny get someone that he can be the mentor for as well. Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan defended the NXT Tag Team Championships against Breezango this week. It was a chaotic match with plenty of outside interference. Drake Maverick was getting involved because he's annoyed about them beating up Killian Dane and smashing his head in a car door. Pat McAfee was getting involved. Pete Dunne was getting involved. There was just lots going on here. Towards the end, McAfee ended up getting wiped out by Drake Maverick, but Pete Dunne took Maverick out, and in the end, of course, Burch and Lorcan ended up retaining the championships before all four of them laid a beatdown upon the three. Now, Drake Maverick working with Breezango actually works pretty well. I'm actually sort of disappointed that he's doing this stuff with Killian Dane right now, because that would have been a pretty entertaining three-man group. But I like the fact that the Kings of NXT are continuing their dominance, and even though it was a pretty easy way to go about it, it just keeps the ball rolling, keeps them on TV, keeps them in the minds of the NXT audience, and when Undisputed Era eventually returns, it's gonna feel like a big moment. It's a shame that we've not got a proper crowd, because I think at this point, if we had a proper crowd, there would be a huge pop for Undisputed Era returning, but nonetheless, I think it's going to feel like a pretty special moment. I can't wait till they start building towards War Games, because I feel like this four-man group, even though some other people say that it's a disjointed group, that it doesn't feel like it fits, Pete Dunne doesn't work well with the other three, I don't agree. I actually think that it works really well, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they've got in store for them over the next few weeks as we start building towards War Games, and I just can't wait for that match in general, to be honest. Now it's time to talk about Smackdown. First off, Sasha Banks, being the utterly down-to-earth and humble person that she is, cut a promo about how strong and resilient she is. She says that the highs and the lows that she's been through this year would be enough to end most people, but not her. She's the boss, she's at the top of her game, the head of the division, and she puts the women's locker room on notice. But the tentative truce between Bayley and Carmella that seems to be going on continues. Bayley comes out, distracts Sasha just long enough for Carmella to come and sneak attack her with a super kick. Good on you, Carmella. I cannot wait for you to just shut Sasha's mouth. I am not a Sasha Banks fan. As a woman, I'm sure that she's fine. As a human being, I'm sure that she's a really nice person. But as a character, I just can't get behind her. She's just got not 1 ounce of humility. So this is absolutely fine by me. I'm not quite sure what's going on between Bayley and Carmella, whether they're having a real partnership, whether they could transition into being a tag team down the line. I don't think so. I think it's just Bayley using Carmella, just basically trying to mess with Sasha, but I think this was a really good way to go. Just a nice transition from Bayley to Carmella as the challenger for Sasha, and I'm sure that the Carmella-Sasha match will be pretty entertaining to watch. Things just aren't going well for Otis right now. Mandy was sent off to Raw, Tucker turned his back on him, he's lost his Money in the Bank briefcase, and just like so many of us do, he's seeking comfort in food. He's backstage, he's got 3 plates all to himself, and he's just trying to eat the pain away. But he's not left to his misery, because Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode come in and start being douchebags, bullying him for being a lonely fat man with no briefcase, no best friend, and just to rub it in, they taunt him that Mandy Rose still occasionally fires off texts to Dolph Ziggler. This understandably makes Otis pissed off, and we get a match between Otis and Dolph Ziggler. Robert Roode distracts Otis at one point, allowing Dolph Ziggler to hit the zigzag, but Otis kicks out. Dolph is tuning up the band, getting ready to hit the super kick, but Otis counters, hits the caterpillar, and a splash for the win. This isn't enough to get rid of Otis's aggression and anger, and is approached by Chad Gable, who tells him to calm down and tells him that he's going to show him how to become Alpha before inviting him to join the Alpha Academy. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how this plays out. Now, I've heard from sighted people that Chad Gable had some sort of evil grin on his face that implied that he's just going to be using Otis to do his dirty work, which, to be honest, is a shame because I really like Chad Gable and I wish that he could just be a face again so that I could get behind him and root for him, because like I said, I really like what Chad Gable does. I am excited to see what the Alpha Academy is though. Here's what I'd do with it. Chad Gable keeps putting on these motivational training sessions. He's acting like he's trying to lift Otis up, but all he's really doing is putting him down. And he sets these tasks, these impossibly hard tasks that Chad demonstrates and makes look really, really easy. And he thinks that Otis is going to struggle with them, but Otis keeps on powering through them. And each week the task gets slowly harder and more ridiculous, and Chad keeps doing it, even rigging the task so that he can do it really easy, and thinking that Otis just isn't going to be able to, but Otis keeps on powering through, and eventually Chad can either get frustrated and attack him, or maybe even actually get impressed, and you can form some sort of team between those two, because they are both really good, and I think that they're going to have some really good chemistry. Either way, I hope that they lean into the comedy a little bit, but not too hard, and try and give them some time to actually shine and show what they can do, because they're both so great, and I'm just looking forward to seeing them bouncing off each other. I'm also glad that Otis got some time to shut Dolph Ziggler's bullying douchebag mouth. We got a fatal four-way between Natalya, Tamina, Liv Morgan and Chelsea Green to see who would qualify for the Smackdown Women's Survivor Series team. And while it was nice to see Chelsea Green, don't get used to it, because this was bad news for Chelsea. She now apparently has an injury. Her first appearance on SmackDown, and it was apparently the first move of the match that gave her the injury. It looks like she's got a broken wrist, so poor Chelsea will probably be out for a few months now. Not a good sign for her, considering that she's suffered a similar injury not that far back in the past, and when people start getting injured loads, Vince stops trusting them and then doesn't use them anymore. So hopefully that doesn't happen to Chelsea, because she deserves to get a push at some point. It was a pretty simple match. Whilst Chelsea and Tamina got taken out at one point, Liv and Natalya were fighting on the inside of the ring. Natalya applies a rear chin lock and has Liv locked in that for a while, as commentary put over what an accomplished submission wrestler Natalya is, despite the fact that she hasn't qualified for the Survivor Series team, even though she's had 2 attempts so far. Liv ends up fighting out of it, mounts a comeback, Tamina gets back in the ring, Liv nails her with a face buster and then ends up picking up the win, and so qualifies for the Survivor Series team, which Natalya doesn't, despite now having 3 attempts. Liv Morgan joining her best friend and teammate Ruby Riott on the Survivor Series team alongside Bianca Belair. That, to me, is a pretty solid team. Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan are an actual established tag team in a WWE exclusive. Ruby was absolutely overjoyed to have Liv on the team with her, which is a good sign, because we're not getting the dissension that we're getting between the Raw team. And having Bianca Belair there just makes that team super powerful, even without 2 more members. Like I said, not good news for Chelsea Green there, absolutely gutted for her. This could have been a really good debut. She could have ended up on the Survivor Series team. I don't know whether it ended up changing the result of the match or not, but just really, really bad luck for her. And as for Liv Morgan, congratulations, you're going to Survivor Series. Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins had a no-holds-barred match which was advertised as the final. chapter. So this might actually be over. This endless, meandering Seth Rollins-Rey Mysterio feud that's been going on for months and months and months and months may finally be over, and they might actually be transitioning to Seth and Murphy instead. So, of course, the Mysterio family are at ringside for this match, offering their support, and at one point Seth goes for Rey's eye again because he is just an utterly dastardly bastard, but Dominic manages to save his good old dad. Murphy gets in the ring and hands Seth a chair. Commentary are putting over that Alia can't believe what's happening. Murphy picks Rey up. He's gonna sacrifice him, but he attacks Seth instead. Rey mounts a comeback, tries to hit a 619 but misses. He tries it a second time and connects, and then, in a tribute to Eddie Guerrero, hits the frog splash for the win. Afterwards, he offers his approval to Buddy Murphy. Of course, Seth is absolutely irate, and he goes to Adam Pearce and demands a match with Buddy Murphy, which will take place next week. It's good that they seem to be transitioning to Seth versus Murphy instead, because I think there's actually some good stuff to mine with them working together for the majority of this year. Seth taking Murphy under his wing, and you know, the way Seth will see it is that he gave him all these golden opportunities, he made him someone, and Murphy will say that he just manipulated him and that he never cared and that he was just using him. And I think that there's actually some good stuff that you can mine out of that. It's a shame that the Mysterios will probably still be involved in their feud, considering that Murphy is basically the newest member of the Mysterio family, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Seth and Murphy can do in the ring against each other. I reckon that they are going to have some absolutely amazing matches, and it'll be fun to see how long they go with it. Maybe up to, I don't know whether they're doing a TLC this year, a TLC match would be pretty cool, or maybe around Royal Rumble time. It's just going to be good to see where they go from it, and I'm glad that we are apparently, we can't necessarily take the word for it, but apparently we're not going to get Rey Mysterio versus Seth Rollins anymore, and nobody can complain about that. Unsurprisingly, we got some more good stuff out of Roman Reigns this week. I say that every week now, and I'll tell you what, when Roman first came back, I did not anticipate that this would be my highlight of the week every single week. So Roman opens up the show, and Heyman talks about the fact that the ring is Roman's island of relevancy, because anyone who steps in there with him gains relevance. Roman talks about the fact that nobody even knew which Uso Jey was before Roman got involved, and now he's a main eventer. He says that he took out Bryan, took out Kevin Owens, and things are only going to continue from there. He also takes a shot at Randy Orton, calling him the secondary champion. And then, in an actual shocker that I had no idea was coming, Drew McIntyre showed up. Drew Mac talks about the fact that last time he was in the ring with one of Paul Heyman's guys, well, we all know how that went. But Roman wouldn't know how it went because he took some time off, and while he was off, Drew became the guy. Roman says that now that he's back, nobody cares about Drew, nobody even knows who Drew is, and tells Drew to explain to the world who he is. Drew says that he's the guy that's going to beat Randy Orton, walk into Survivor Series, and show Roman who the real secondary champion really is. This show of disrespect from Drew brings out Jey Uso, who just hasn't learnt his lesson from last week whatsoever. He asks Drew what he's doing here. He's like, this isn't Monday night, this is Smackdown, and we run the place. Not Roman runs the place, we run the place. Getting a little bit big for your boots there, Jey. I think that you've got it mixed up about the power dynamics here. You're not an actual stable. Roman has you by the nuts. Anyway, Jey says that the last few people that showed disrespect to Roman were Bryan and Kevin Owens, and look how things worked out for them. And then he challenges Drew to a match. Roman is not happy about this. He asks Jey why he was out there, who told him to be out there, and says that he doesn't make the match, Roman does. Drew ends up going to Adam Pearce, who says that he can't give him an official match, but he'll give him an unsanctioned match with Jey Uso for the main event. So, why even go through the rigmarole of saying that it can't be an official one because he's a Raw superstar? If you're going to have it in your main event and it's an unsanctioned match, just don't bother. It just seemed really awkward. Anyway, Drew does a really good job of trying to stay on top of Jey Uso. He's throwing him round, delivering belly-to-belly suplexes, he headbutts him, he gives him a superplex, and then Roman comes out to watch what's going on. Jey assures Roman that he's got this, he's gonna win, but Roman says that he doesn't care if Jey wins, he just wants him to make Drew pay. So Jey gets back in and he starts absolutely pummeling Drew, just taking it to him, trying to make him pay, but it doesn't take long for Drew to pop off a Claymore for the win. I found Jey's attitude here a little bit jarring. We went from a couple of weeks ago where he was telling Roman that he hated him to now coming out and trying to defend his honour against Drew McIntyre. I guess that Roman's been drilling it into him that if he allows people to disrespect either him or Roman, they are disrespecting the entire family, and maybe that's starting to actually take some effect on Jey, but it seemed pretty quick. It seems like a pretty quick transition from I hate you to hey, don't talk shit about him, we run the place. Getting a little bit too big for his boots, like I said, but I thought that this was really, really interesting. It throws a spanner in the works. I thought for sure that Randy would probably end up coming out with the win, but I'm really not sure now because, you know, the fact that they've actually had a little bit of a build between Drew and Roman sort of makes me feel like they're gonna actually give Drew the win there. So yeah, I thought that was a really interesting way to go because it just builds the drama and the tension for Monday, and it also keeps the story going between Roman and Jey, with Roman being an absolute bossy boot and just not letting Jey have any autonomy and just wanting to control everything that he does. Absolutely well done. A little peek behind the curtain, I usually try to record the first part of the podcast, the Raw and NXT part, on a Friday, so that when I wake up on Saturday I can see what happened on Smackdown, write my notes and get to recording as quickly as possible. This morning I wake up, I look on Twitter and Zelina Vega's trending and I think, oh cool, is she qualified for the Survivor Series team? No, it's the opposite of that. She's been released altogether. So I'm looking through and I'm thinking, why? Is she asked for a release? What's going on here? And I see that people are talking about the fact that she tweeted out, I support unionising wrestling, and that she's been released 10 minutes after that tweet, and everyone thinks that that's the reason why, and I just couldn't believe it, man. I was so shocked. It came out of absolutely nowhere. So apparently PW Insider are reporting that she knew about the release before tweeting that tweet, which is a pretty clever move if you ask me, because she finds out about it and then tweets that. It makes WWE look really bad. Not the most professional move on the way out, but one that definitely gets people behind her. And apparently one of the reasons that this has happened is because she's been very vocal about continuing Twitch and all of the Twitch matters that have been going on with the third party earnings, etc. So yeah, what an interesting development. It's a shame to see Zelina go because she's actually really good, and like everyone else has pointed out, she is amazing on the mic, one of the best, and I'm actually quite disappointed. I assumed that she was going to be on the Survivor Series team, and what a shame that this is how it's had to play out. I just think, like everyone else has said, there's a lot of people have said how have they got certain people, I'm not going to name any names, how have they got certain people still under employment, and then Zelina Vega gets released apparently just for supporting, carrying on doing Twitch or unionising wrestling, and just what a mess WWE have made of this third party earnings situation with the independent contractors. An absolute mess. It just makes them look absolutely terrible. But I'm just a right shock to wake up to this morning. Well, that's about it. If you've got any thoughts on this week in WWE, drop them in the comments section and we'll have a chat about it. I'll see you next time. Stay safe. But for now, I'm off, and you should have a good one.